You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And welcome back to Capitol View. I'm David Goins alongside Roby Brock. We welcome in our political long table for this Sunday morning. We're joined by State Senator Jason Rapert along with Max Brantley, editor of the Arkansas Times. Gentlemen, welcome to Capitol View.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
A very busy week politically and really throughout the country. I mean, if you want to take a look at what the state of Texas was doing with their abortion debate in the Senate, the U.S. Supreme Court had some stuff on the federal level. Just from this week, what's maybe your takeaway? I'll leave it open to Max. Start first.
I think a lot of it was drama that didn't signify a lot. I think we created a political phenomenon in Texas, or she created it on her own. Wendy Davis, the senator, mounted the filibuster. I think the Supreme Court, I hope both sides can put aside the old judicial activism nonsense, because acts of Congress were overridden on both sides of this equation in the name of the Constitution, which I think the Supreme Court can do.
Well, first, it's nice that we can agree on something to start with, and that is that judicial activism really has no place. Congress makes the laws, the executive enforces the laws, and the Supreme Court, unfortunately, in many cases recently, they've begun to sort of make law or at least overturn the will of the majority of voters in some cases. And as for Texas, I actually had some calls from Texas, and what I like seeing is that there's an acknowledgement that we need to take another look at Roe v. Wade. The fact is 55 million children taking an abortion in this nation is simply too much. And I'm glad to see that even the younger generations now, in fact, Girl State here in Arkansas actually took up the heartbeat bill and passed that bill of their own volition during Girl State. And I think that you're seeing an acknowledgement that we need a better policy. As for DOMA is concerned, I believe that states have the right to pass laws that they wish to live under. And obviously, in this country right now, the Supreme Court has basically overturned that. And that's something that I don't appreciate, and I will continue to stand up for the Arkansas Constitution as it relates to both of them.
Well, we've been down that road on race before, and people in the 50s said the same thing. States ought to be able to require segregation based on race and ought to be able to prevent marriage based on interracial relationships. And the world evolved and it changed, and I think we're in agreement that it's a better place. I happen to think the world is going to evolve to that, though I happen to think Arkansas probably will be at the end of the line on that evolution.
I don't know where
let me interrupt you real quick.
I don't know where the 50s came from there, but I wouldn't agree with anything that he just said on that as far as those issues.
Well, those are the facts.
It has nothing to do
I
with
mean, those are the facts of the law.
Kind of a states' rights perspective is
Right,
kind of what
States' rights, but nobody's for segregation.
Well,
they were.
Right, well, but there were at the time.
60 years ago,
That was the law of the land at the time when the states were able to determine what they wanted to do. But back to what Max was talking about, particularly with the same-sex marriage ruling from the Supreme Court. When you do look at public polling on this, obviously I know where your position is on this, I know where your position is on this. When you look at the public polling, it does seem to be trending in terms of acceptance in that. Do you think, Senator Rapert, that there is a time and a day when public opinion swings to the point where there is an acceptance of gay marriage?
Well, I think you're seeing a change in some of the attitudes, but I believe it's been based upon what I think is a false premise. I believe that every single individual has a right to make choices in that regard completely on their own. And I would not want anybody to be discriminated against in the way of violating their civil rights to have a job, to be able to live where they want to live, those sorts of things. What I can't understand, and most of America can't understand right now, is why is it that you have to destroy traditional marriage as we know it in order to say that you can do what you want to do? Nobody is preventing a person that is homosexual from doing anything that they want to do right now. But it's the fact that you have to come in and destroy traditional marriage, which is between a man and a woman.
Can I interrupt and say this is the logical fallacy, is two people of the same sex marrying doesn't destroy my marriage. And the fact that 12 states now have legal marriage hasn't altered the state of my matrimony one iota. But I think there is a real family issue that we're facing in Arkansas. Yes. We all know that the rulings by the Supreme Court are not going to affect the status of law in Arkansas today. But very shortly, courts are going to begin hearing the fallout from this ruling, and it's very important, and it's pro-family that we change to adapt to it. There's going to be a couple that marries in Massachusetts, and they're going to move to Arkansas, God forbid, if they expect equal treatment of the law, because they're not going to get it. But they're going to get divorced. It happens. Same-sex couples are going to divorce. They're going to have children. And then the courts are not going to be able to follow the very clear framework we have for dealing with families under Arkansas law, because they're going to be in this judicial neverland of legal in Massachusetts, illegal in Arkansas. Inevitably, the court's going to have to tee up the fundamental equality question of people who've been granted full status and equal rights in one place who are denied them in another.
So the discussion and obviously the legal ramifications of this it's going to go on for a while.
Oh yeah, this is only the beginning, the opening shot.
Yeah, agree there. Arkansas legislature is obviously not in session, since April. So I'm going to, kind of indulge back in on Texas a little bit, since their legislature seems to kind of go on for a while. Your idea of this second special session, because obviously, the thought was with Wendy Davis and this filibuster, the very small minority of Democrats in that state may have won the battle, but obviously, with the Republican majority, they'll win the war and they'll be able to pass this legislation. Your thoughts on extending this out? Because obviously, a very big tenet of conservative government is less government. But it sounds like they're going into their second special session.
Well, if you had not had the grandstanding, in which I always think that my colleague to my left likes to talk about with me, but it's kind of interesting that some of the most extreme views in this nation right now are coming from the left. And that state senator chose to make this display. And I don't know if you saw that the other night, but when I saw a clip from that situation and people shrieking and screaming and cheering up in the grandstands there, the chamber gallery, it's not something that we should have happening in any state capital and shouldn't have happening at all. And if it had been a conservative group that was behaving the way I saw the pro-abortionists behaving in Texas, been a totally different media outtake. And so my opinion on that is this.
Emotional outcries are, I think decorum is better, and emotional outcries can be expected. We had a fraternity brother of mine from South Carolina who shouted that the President of the United States was a liar from the floor of the Congress, to his everlasting shame. And so those moments happen. But extremism is in the eye of the beholder. I don't understand why the Republicans hate the First Amendment so much. In your view, it's extremist if you express opposition to the other side's point of view, which is what Wendy Davis did very eloquently. She's going to be in the minority in Texas, and in very short order, that issue is going to be resolved in favor of the anti-abortion side of the Texas legislature. I think you might be surprised to find how comprehensive public polling shows that people are far more split on this issue than you like to represent. It is true that a solid majority have reservations about abortion. A solid majority over and over again in Gallup, Harris, and all the credible polling shows that they're not ready to make it illegal. They want to preserve it as an option. And I think Wendy Davis represents that point of view. I think she's going to be a powerful candidate in the future in Texas.
All right, we got to take a quick commercial break here. We're going to come back and talk about more political culture in Arkansas, maybe across the nation. We're with Max Brantley of the Arkansas Times, State Senator Jason Rapert. I'm Roby Brock alongside David Goins. You're watching Capitol View here on Channel 4.
Farm Bureau helps protect its members in more ways than you might think. They've always been the voice of agriculture in Arkansas, working on behalf of folks like me when nobody else would. And Farm Bureau stands for the values that Arkansas families care about. They've protected my right to farm and make a living, which helps everybody who likes food on the table. You know what they say, Arkansas counts on agriculture, and agriculture counts on Farm Bureau.
One of the real advantages of electric cooperatives membership is having a voice in our state's energy future.
Not a week goes by without important energy issues making headlines. These are issues that need to be discussed. And you should know that as policies are being developed, the cooperatives are looking out for our members, advocating what's best for you.
We are your friends and neighbors.
We are your local electric company.
The electric cooperatives.
We are Arkansas.
Welcome back to Capitol View. I'm Roby Brock. We're joined at our political roundtable this morning by Max Brantley from the Arkansas Times, State Senator Jason Rapert from Conway. Thank you both gentlemen for being here. Let's talk first about the Martha Schaffner trial. This week we saw a hearing. Does her trial pose a problem for Democrats, Max, and an opportunity for Republicans?
Well, sure. To have a former Democratic officeholder on trial and being, if not admitting, being forced to deal with some pretty obvious bad things, that is receiving money from somebody who got state business, this isn't good for anybody, and she'll be associated with the party and should be, and the Republicans will make hay of it. You know, I don't know yet how this is going to end up. Chuck Banks tried to get a plea bargain to start with. I'm not exactly sure whether that option remains on the table for him, but it's hard for me to see a path to acquittal for her, but that's what trials are for, and that's unfair in a way to say that.
Senator Rapert, what's your take on that? You've worked a lot with that office in trying to unearth some of these and make some corrections.
I've worked with them for a long time, and as you know, I was one of the first that called on her resignation, and that was because of what I saw in this situation. I'm Series 7 licensed investments, and I had heard enough at that point to know something wasn't right in the way business was being conducted. And I really genuinely don't care whether she's Democrat, Republican, or independent. There's no place in state government for corruption and unethical behavior. And the thing that probably bothers me the most about the situation, she did what she did and she's going to have to be accountable. But the employees in that office literally endured intimidation. And frankly, if it were a private company, the state of Arkansas would probably be sued right now, because they were not protected the way they should, because many of those employees said that they went to people and asked for help and said, our people wouldn't help us. I don't know what they meant by that, but I can tell you justice is going to be served. She's going to have a trial. She could have saved the Arkansas a lot more embarrassment and trouble if she had just pled guilty, but I think she has a complex here. She enjoys the spotlight, even if it's negative, and I think that is wrong. And I feel sorry for her. I hope that she can somehow reclaim her sanity in this issue, because she's not acting as you would think someone would normally act when they've been caught red-handed.
Sticking with federal court for a minute, it's been a while since the 12-week fetal heartbeat bill was before federal court. This idea of severability, you know, that maybe part of your legislation could survive if the main part of it is thrown out, and that is banning abortion after 12 weeks. Do you still think that's possible? I mean, some of the court filings since then, you maybe get a sense that Judge Wright may just be inclined to throw the whole thing out. I mean, what would you think?
Well, it's not only possible, that's the law. In the state of Arkansas, and even Mr. Brantley, which can speak on it in a minute, it actually states that severability is inherent in the law. I specifically discussed this issue with Bureau of Legislative Research attorneys, as well as people involved in the process. That's why I have a tolling provision at the end of the bill.
Right, but do you think Judge Wright will throw the whole thing? Because we're getting a sense now that maybe this isn't severable and the whole thing's going out.
Well, Jason's correct, but there is a but. And there is a clear line of legal precedent in Arkansas, not in federal court, that says there are standards for severability. And if the part, even if there is a severability clause, if it's intrinsically knotted up with the purpose of the law, and after all, you couldn't establish this cutoff for abortion unless you required the fetal heartbeat test in the first place, I think there is at least, a person of good faith would admit, an argument that part of the law is bound up together. And so there's an argument to be made. I'm not going to predict how the judge is going to rule.
Well, I can tell you, actually, I was there in the courtroom when she brought it up, and I respect the judge. It's her courtroom. And she actually brought up and stated to the bench, she said, if the state were to ask me to uphold the informed consent provisions of this bill, I would be inclined to do so. She went further in saying, I do not find that it is unconstitutional or too much of a burden to do an ultrasound to determine if there's a heartbeat and inform the lady and let her know what is the statistical probability of the baby coming to term. And as I've told you, and we could talk about this a long time, I believe when there's a heartbeat, there's life. 60% of Arkansas said they approved of the heartbeat bill. 70% of the legislature voted for it, and we overrode a veto.
I'm not going to filibuster my opinion on this, but there's a heartbeat at 5 weeks, and I don't think if you presented a series of questions in an informed opinion poll to people that they would say a woman who is raped or has a case of incest or has a night she regrets and learns at 5 weeks because she's required to take a fetal heartbeat thing that she can't take a prescription form of medicine to end that abortion, that 60% of the people in America would say she should be required to do it. I don't happen to believe that.
One last topic before we have to wrap up here. Let's talk about the Mark Pryor pending Tom Cotton battle here. You guys both think that Tom Cotton is the ultimate Republican nominee?
I think Tom's headed in that direction. There's no question about it, and he has to make his decision in his own time. The fact of the matter is the winds are against Mark Pryor in this race. He's been on the wrong side of the issues as it relates to the opinions of the Arkansas people. Now, I respect him and the legacy of his family, and to actually know Mark, and I believe he's a nice person. I believe if he could, he'd switch parties. But he's in a situation he can't, because the fact is he's trying to run as a Republican now. So we'll see what happens. But Tom Cotton has got the ability, he's got the skills, and he has got the momentum that he can win this election in Arkansas.
Tom Cotton is the best possible candidate for Mark Pryor because he is so extreme. Here's a guy who's voted against disaster aid. He's voted against the farm bill. He's voted against food stamps. He wants to go to war against anybody that rattles a saber out there. He's strange. He has a weird way about him. He came back to Arkansas after years away as a consultant. I understand that the Warhawks love him. They raised $100,000 for him this week. He is a smart guy. There's no doubt about that. Believe me, Mark Pryor is going to have a tough race this year. If Tom Cotton's the guy, the Club for Growth, who loves anything as long as a guy will promise you to cut their taxes, will give him however, the billionaires will give him how much money he needs. The big casino guy, Adelson, raised the big money for him this week. But he's, out of all the candidates that Mark Pryor could face, he's the best one. Steve Womack would be another matter entirely.
Max, Jason, I'm going to stop you there. Senator Rapert, Max, Brantley. Excellent panel. We'll let you guys guest host someday, maybe.
That'd be awesome.
No, he can't be on.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for being
can we shake hands on
Yeah, look at that.
Thanks,
look at that. See, told you
it's a TV moment right there, guys. A TV moment.
That's right. We'll be back to wrap up the show. I'm David Goins alongside Roby Brock. You're watching Capitol View on Sunday morning on KARK.